Hello, this is Tony Blazier for the Motocross Vault presented by Blinzall. If you're in the market for some high-quality racing oil for your two-stroke or four, make sure you go to blinzall.com and use our discount code VAULT20 to save 20% at checkout. Thank you for all the support.
This is Todd DeHoop, and welcome to the Motocross Vault.
Hello and welcome back to the Motocross Vault. My name is Tony Blazier, and what this video is going to cover is Honda's all-new 1992 CR250. Now, this is a machine that a lot of people think very fondly of. A lot of people probably say this is maybe the last best generation of the CR, this last steel frame model from 92 through 96. I own a 96, love that bike, really great machine. I didn't personally own a 92. Actually, in 92, I thought this thing was hideous. I hated this change. I had the 90 model, and I love that kind of orangey color they used through most of the 80s. And when they went to this pink kind of a red, they called nuclear red in 92, I just thought it was weird. If you look at the photos, even the photos that are going to be in this review, it doesn't really do the color justice. In person, it was kind of a light translucent pink, particularly if you had light showing on it. It was much more, not nearly as deep a red as what it looks in the brochure photos and stuff. And it actually kind of turned pinker as time went. It wasn't very durable. The sun faded it really quickly. In 93, they actually totally redid the pigment a little bit and added a lot more red back to it. So the 93, 94 colors are actually subtly different than this 92. The 92 is really a one-year color. This first year, the nuclear red, it was just unique. So I think at the time it was one of these love it or hate it kind of deals. Me personally, I hated it. I didn't like the change to go into the white airbox and the white tank and all that stuff. I thought it was weird, but it quickly grew on me. By 94, actually, I was totally on board. I thought it was good. And actually ended up taking one of my 90s and putting like 94 style red, like the nuclear red plastic on it and stuff, and actually thought it looked pretty good. But it took me a while. I'm not, when they make these radical changes, I'm always a little bit like, what the hell's happening? And it takes me a while to get on board. And this one, same kind of thing. But I think overall, this was a really successful, couple of years there. This 92 is probably the least successful of all of them. They had some issues with frames cracking, and under the chassis were a little bit underbuilt. Actually ended up hurting like Jeff Stanton and Bale early on in the year when Bradshaw came out to such a great early part of the season. He really had it up on him this first year of the new design. It took Honda kind of to figure out they needed to add some additional bracing to the frame to get the bike to handle properly. And by mid-year, they kind of came on, and Stanton would end up winning this title in the end. But early on, they were kind of behind the eight ball. This motor, though, was phenomenal. It's very different than the older CRs, though. The old HPP style, like in my 90, the 87s, 88s, and all those, they were very more linear and smooth. And this 92 was kind of soft down low and hit real hard, faster, but more aggressive feeling. And some people liked it, some people didn't. It really depended. I think the faster guys liked that change more than the slower guys did. But overall, I'd say this is a really iconic machine, and certainly one of the most important machines of the 90s. It would be, basically this one would go on to win the Supercross title, and then every other year after this 93, 94, 95, 96, after Stanton wins this 92 title, Jeremy would take a CR very similar to this to the Supercross title. So really great machine. And to be honest, the CR250 never really captured the same level of success it had in the early 90s here with this design later. After they went to the aluminum frame, the bike became much more polarizing. And then in the early 90s, in the early 2000s, they started to get the chassis a little bit better, but they were messing around with the motor, and it just didn't really work as well. This early 90s is kind of the sweet spot for CRs. They were really great machines for these couple of years. Aside from suspension performance, they were still trying to figure that stuff out. For some reason, Honda, from like 88 until like 2000 or something, they had a hard time getting their forks to work very well. Some years are better than others. Some years are just absolutely awful. My 90, pretty much the 90 through like 97s were pretty terrible in terms of suspension performance. I don't know what was going on. It's funny because Honda they would switch from Kayaba one year to go to Shawa and then back to Kayaba. And they run very similar components than what were on some of the competition, yet something didn't work on the CR. I can only guess it was whoever was doing the setup either here or in Japan just couldn't seem to get it sorted out, but they struggled through the 90s. It was really kind of the weak link in these bikes. Everything else was really good except the fork performance and the shock performance wasn't on the best. Basically Honda was playing third or fourth fiddle to the competition through this era and that, but really fast guys, they're going to get the suspension revalved anyway. I don't think it hindered their love for this machine. Now, if you like this sort of thing, make sure you check out some of the other bikes I've done. I've done many other motocross machines. I've also done several ATVs, including like the iconic ATC 250R, the 350X. I've done a little review on the history of the Honda Odyssey. I'm very agnostic on off-road stuff, so if there's some kind of a machine you want covered, I probably have covered it. I also did a complete history of American motocross as well, kind of touching on like the 10 things that I really think kind of shaped American motocross that I'm real proud of. If you want to check that out on the channel. If you'd like to support what I do, I have tons of Motocross Vault merch available. I've done many different designs, including a version of a 1992 CR250 you can see here in the back of a iconic 454 Chevrolet SS full-size truck. Love these trucks. The 454 was definitely one of the coolest trucks available in the early 90s, and I think that CR looks awesome in the back of it here. I have versions with Kawasaki KDX I just came out with. Also have several different ones with different ATVs, different truck combos. There are dozens and dozens of different designs I have on my Teespring store that you can check out if you want to take a look at something and see if there's something that might tickle your fancy there. I will put a card here in the video, and a link will be in the description as well. So here, without further ado, is the story of the 1992 Honda CR250R. In 1991, no machine in pro motocross was as successful as Honda's CR250R. Winner of an astounding 10 out of the last 12 AMA 250 National and Supercross titles, it was the very definition of domination. Nothing was as fast, well-built, or durable as Honda's venerable Deuce and a Half. The linchpin of this unprecedented run of motocross titles was the CR's amazing motor. Originally introduced in 1986, the Honda PowerPort mill was a marvel of smooth and broad power. Using a complex set of gears, springs, and valves to alter the port timing, the HPP motor pulled longer and stronger than any other bikes on the track. It made the CR the powerhouse of the late 80s and early 90s 250 class. By 1991, that remarkable motor was coming up on its 6th year at the front of the pack. It was still the fastest motor in the class, but many riders had come to loathe its tedious maintenance schedule. The Honda PowerPort system, while proficient at producing power, was prone to carbon buildup and a nightmare to service. Honda recommended the mechanism be disassembled after every 4 hours of use, and neglect meant a major drop in performance. It was wearisome to take apart, difficult to reassemble, and easy to screw up. Also becoming tiresome was Honda's utter failure to provide this rocket of a motor with even moderately decent suspension performance. Since the glory years of 1986 and 1987, the CRs had become less and less efficient at absorbing the track. Year in and year out, the CR250 came with harsh and poorly set up suspension. The switch to inverted forks in 1989 only exacerbated this problem, and by 1991, the CR had earned a reputation for being as punishing on your wrists and backside as it was fast. For 1992, Honda looked to address all of these issues with an all-new CR250R. The new bike retired the championship-winning 249cc mill used since 1986, and replaced it with an all-new design that was both lighter and more compact. The new power plant retained the cylinder reed intake of the old mill, but replaced the Honda PowerPort system with an all-new exhaust valve that used 50% fewer moving parts. The new composite racing valve, or CRV, did away with the guillotine-style valves of the HPP and replaced them with a new dual-valve design that incorporated both the variable exhaust port timing of the HPP and the resonance chamber of the older-style ATAC system. Similar in theory to Kawasaki's Kawasaki Integrated Power Valve System, or KIPS, the new CRV was lighter, less complicated, and easier to service than the old system. In addition to the revised power plant, Honda spec'd an all-new chassis that was narrower, lighter, and more compact for 1992. Overall wheelbase was shorter by a full inch, and the steering head angle was pulled in 2 degrees. Complementing the new frame was radically changed bodywork that offered a smoother rider compartment, narrower profile, and a very bold new look. The new plastic ditched the orange mist color of 1991 in favor of a neon shade of pink Honda coined nuclear red. Bright and eye-popping, the new color was unlike anything ever seen on a Honda motocross machine. Complementing the new frame was a redesigned ProLink rear suspension and a new set of 43mm Showa inverted forks. Pared down 2mm for 1992, the new smaller diameter forks aimed to dial back some of the harshness from Honda's rigid front end. Finally, finishing off the package was a set of new lighter wheels and a redesigned front braking system. Already the standard of the class, the new Nissan binder offered more power, better feel, and a shorty lever to afford more rider comfort. On the track, the new CR ran absolutely nothing like the bike it replaced. Where the 91 motor was smooth and torquey, the new CR-V mill hit hard and revved fast. What the old motor did with a seamless crescendo of power, the new bike accomplished with a sudden bark and a furious pull. It was slightly soft off idle, before catching fire in the mid-range and pulling to an eye-watering top-end hook. On slick surfaces, it was much harder to get hooked up than the old bike, but if there was traction, the new machine roosted away. It was snappy, snarly, and by far the fastest motor in the 250 class. While the new motor's prowess was a welcome relief to those who lamented the passing of the HPP mill, the real question for 1992 was whether the new bike could finally fix the CR suspension problems. The new 43mm Showa sliders offered 4mm more travel for 92, and a new cartridge system with brought rebound adjustability to the CR for the first time. Internally, a new alumite coating reduced friction, and a revised oil lock system aimed to reduce aeration of the oil. With 14 adjustments for compression and 17 available for rebound, the new forks were by far the most adjustable units ever offered on a Honda motocross machine. In terms of actual performance, the new forks were an improvement, but still not very good. There was slightly less of the mid-stroke harshness, which had battered riders' wrists in 1991, and a little more flex built into the triple tapered legs, but the performance still lagged well behind the competition. As delivered from the factory, they were undersprung and overdamped. This caused them to hang down in the stroke and blow through the early part of the travel. On big hits, they hammered into a wall of damping mid-stroke and would absolutely refuse to bottom. If you upped the spring rate and lowered the oil level, the action improved significantly, and this would allow the forks to actually move all the way through its travel. By no means were the forks ever plush, but at least these simple mods could make them livable. Out back, Honda decided to return to a Showa damper on the CR250 after using KYB units in 1991. The new shock offered a larger 46mm shaft, a longer stroke, and more internal volume than before. Punching out a full 12.6 inches of travel, the new ProLink rear end offered 20 adjustments for compression and 22 adjustments for rebound. Made to the new shock was a redesigned linkage and a new shorter and stiffer alloy swing arm. While the rear suspension was all new, its performance turned out not to be. On the track, it reacted more or less the same as the loathed 1991 rear end. If ridden aggressively, it absorbed big hits well, but if you dialed down the pace, it literally beat you to death. On small chop and sharp hits, it kicked and was very unforgiving. Under acceleration, small bumps were transmitted directly to your spine, and under braking, the bike became very unstable. The new chassis proved very adept at corners, however. At speed, though, the short wheelbase, quick steering geometry, and unsettled suspension made the bike a very busy ride. It never felt very planted, and was prone to violent headshake under deceleration. On the plus side, once on the Supercross-style circuit, the bike was much happier. The stiff suspension, hard-hitting motor, and cut-and-thrust chassis worked very well in this environment. The CR offered a very light feel in the air, and on the ground, that made tricky jump combos a piece of cake. The new front brake was also a major improvement, with excellent feel and class-leading power. Aside from the suspension, there were a few other minor and major problems in 1992 with the CR250. While the new bodywork was lauded for its fit and feel, the new thinner plastic proved far less durable than in the past. The fluorescent color quickly faded from red to pink when subjected to sunlight, and if it was ever bent, left very ugly white creases in the plastic. There were also issues with broken clutch plates and baskets, as well as durability problems with the frame. With hard use, both the frame and swing arm developed cracks, and savvy riders started adding material to shore up the overtaxed chassis. After several years of nearly bulletproof CRs, this turned out to be a bit of a disappointment in 1992. In 1992, Honda released the ultimate Supercross weapon. Razor sharp, rocket fast, and relentlessly demanding, it was a bike made to dominate in the stadiums. There were smoother motors available, plusher forks on the market, and more stable chassis on the track, but nothing was as laser-focused as Honda's new Neon CR. If you were fast enough to make its suspension work, and strong enough to use all of its potential, nothing else in 1992 was even close. So there you have it. That's a look back at the 1992 CR250, an all-new machine that really, I think, has a very important place in the history of 90s motocross. Maybe the most iconic machine of the 90s. Really a great performing machine once you got a few things sorted out. Certainly had plenty of motor performance. If you got the suspension revalved, you probably had the most aggressive and certainly the winningest machine on the track. You know, Honda was so dominant this year. They won so many Supercross titles in a row. It's kind of hard to think how tough things have been since Ricky left them. Really, they've struggled to kind of put it together. But man, in the late 80s and early 90s, Honda was a winning machine, and it was hard to think that the CRs and how superior they were in terms of their handling and the motor performance didn't have something to do with that. Now, obviously, having the best riders and a great team, all that plays in, but they had a good foundation. You know, these CRs were great race bikes. They weren't made for puttering around and trail riding particularly well, but if you're looking for a hardcore motocross machine, it was hard to go wrong with these CRs. They were good bikes for sure. So if you like this sort of thing, make sure you check out some of the others I've done on the channel. If you could like, subscribe, and share on social media, I would very much appreciate it. If If you have other bikes you'd like to see me do in the future, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. I definitely read them and take them under advisement. And if I have the information to make it happen, I will try to do that in the future. So until we meet again, this is Tony Blazier for the Motocross Vault. Keep the rubber side down. Peace.